Unbelievable. Well, Germany and the United States yesterday announced plans to send tanks to Ukraine. The United States with Abrams tanks, Germany with Leopard 2 tanks, Poland also announcing it's sending Leopard tanks to Ukraine yesterday. And this morning, we learned that Portugal announced it's sending tanks to Ukraine, a country that I didn't even know had any tanks. Russia says that Europe is now expanding the target for this war, and Russia will see these as potential targets going forward. Have we just escalated things beyond where they were before? Scott Ritter is a former UN weapons inspector. He knows a thing or two about weapons and their implications, and he joins us on the show. Scott, great to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
So last week on the show, you said something that I thought was incredibly important, and I've been thinking about it all week, which is the more weapons we send to Ukraine, the more weapons NATO sends to Ukraine, the weaker it makes Ukraine, both in terms of manpower and, of course, opening up for further attack. You see this amplification, these additional tanks that are being sent as vindication of your message, or is now Ukraine suddenly going to win this war?
Well, Ukraine's not going to win this war. They're definitely not going to win it with 14 Leopard 2 tanks, A6 variants that Germany claims it's going to provide by the end of March, early April. 14 more Leopard A2 tanks that Poland's going to provide. Between 30 and 50 Abrams tanks, which aren't going to show up on the battlefield till the end of this year or early next year, or any other tanks that are going to be provided. The fact of the matter is, these tanks aren't game changers. The Ukrainians have been trained to fight in Soviet-era tanks, T-72s, and their own T-64 updates, three-person crews. They're inheriting tanks right now, or they're going to receive tanks that have four-person crews. Why? Because you have to manually load these tanks. And so automatically the whole concept of, putting a crew in a tank and employing the tank is fundamentally changed. And if you haven't trained on this, if you haven't practiced on it, you're just getting into a system. It's like, if I brought you a Formula One car and you've never trained on high-speed driving, and I said, Clayton, take her for a spin.
Right.
You would be like a little old grandma. And you have no clue what you're doing. You don't know how to handle this piece of machinery. That's going to be the Ukrainians with this equipment. It takes 22 weeks to train an M1 Abrams crew member. I would imagine that the Leopard 2 tank is equally as complex a piece of equipment. And so Germany is going to provide 14 of these tanks in, 10 weeks' time? So even if the Ukrainians were getting training right now, when they receive the tanks, they're not going to be trained on it, let alone know what to do with 14 tanks. If anybody thinks 14 tanks is a game changer, you have no clue what modern war is. These 14 tanks will be chewed up if they ever arrive on the battlefield. But the likelihood of all 14 arriving is slim to none because of the maintenance problem of the tank. This is one of the things we talked about previously about the different infantry fighting vehicles that were being provided, the maintenance nightmare they presented. For the M1 Abrams tank, under ideal circumstances, for every hour of operation, you need 3 hours of maintenance. And that's with American crews that are actually trained, dedicated military occupation specialties of guys who go through the schools, they know how to do this, and they have the entire system backing them up. In the United States system, we'll have a tank company up front, and behind it is this huge system ready to back it up. With the Ukrainians, we're going to put an M1 Abrams tank company out front, and then there's going to be this thin little umbilical cord that goes back because there will be no direct support. If the tank breaks, it has to be removed from the battlefield, taken back to a place where it can be repaired. It's going to be very difficult for this tank to appear on the battlefield because the Russians right now are a little irritated, and they're going to put everything they have into interdicting these weapons before they get to the battlefield. But let's say they get to the battlefield and they break. That just means they have to run the gauntlet one more time to get fixed, and then run the gauntlet again to come back. Every time you do that, you're setting up Ukrainians to die. And this is all that's going to happen. These weapons will have no meaningful impact. Just a news flash for NATO and all the NAFO fellas out there that are sort of cheerleading right now that this is a great thing. For the last 20 years, NATO and the United States have been focused singularly on Afghanistan and the Middle East. The last thing they've been doing is preparing for large-scale ground combat in Europe. The Russians have been preparing for large-scale ground combat in Europe since 2008. In 2016, they fundamentally reworked their organizational structures, and they're continuing to update them today for the sole purpose of closing with and destroying a NATO-style army. That doesn't just mean how NATO fights doctrinally, but the equipment. Every piece of Russian equipment that's in the Russian inventory today has been designed and is intended to kill NATO tanks. So if people think that the Leopard 2 showing up on the battlefield is suddenly going to scare the Russians, you're wrong. They're ready for it, they've trained for it, and they have the equipment to deal death and destruction. And for the Germans, I just don't know what's going through their brains.
Yeah.
The idea of putting German tanks on Ukrainian soil for the purpose of killing Russians. Man, that didn't work out too good the last time they did it, and it's not going to work out too good this time.
Yeah, it seems like instead of going the opposite direction and moving towards peace, they're doubling down on this. Now, Russia, of course, amplifying its rhetoric over the past 24 hours and saying this is an extension now of the targets, right? You're now opening up the targets. This isn't just the Ukrainian battlefield now. This gives. I mean, you can speak to that a little bit. What you're hearing from Russia now, that you're sort of expanding the battlefield beyond just Ukraine. We're now actively looking at, you have Portugal announcing these tanks are going to be delivered through Spain. They're actively telling us how on rail lines they're going to be delivering these tanks through Spain. So they're going to be coming from Poland in all of these different locations. What do you make of that side from the Russian side of this now?
Well, first of all, we have to understand that the Ukrainian defense minister last month just straight out said that Ukraine is a de facto member of NATO. That the Ukrainian army is a proxy NATO force, and that Ukraine's willing to sacrifice its blood, but it must receive the equipment from NATO in order to carry out these tasks. So by his own definition, which then was, you could say, well, that's just an irresponsible, over-enthusiastic Ukrainian official. Then you back it up with the meeting of the Ramstein contact group on January 20th, where all of the defense ministers of NATO and other nations who aren't NATO, like Sweden and Finland and such, got together and, without exception, articulated a similar, theory of their involvement. That this is about a NATO war with Russia. The German foreign minister just said it straight up to her European colleagues. Germany is at war with Russia. Let's be clear. Russia has every legal right to attack any place in Europe that is involved in the transfer of these weapons to Ukraine. By agreeing to transfer these weapons to Ukraine, every nation that has said, yes, this is what we're going to do, has become an active participant in the conflict. And under the laws of war, Russia can take them out. Now, here's the good news. Russia's simply putting a marker down and saying, you've just increased our target depth. We can do this. But Russia has been managing escalation from the very beginning. The last thing Russia wants is to turn this into not just a de facto, but a de jure of conflict between NATO and Russia, because now it's nuclear war and it's over. So I don't see, at least in this iteration, Russia reaching out and touching Polish logistics centers, German railheads, Spanish tunnels. I don't see that happening because Russia doesn't need to do that. Russia's winning this war, hands down. And Russia's going to win this war, hands down. But Russia is letting NATO know that if by some strange set of occurrences, all this equipment showed up in Ukraine, and Ukrainians were able to assemble a mailed fist that threatened Crimea or anything else, that it's game, set, over. I mean, if Russia will open up and unleash everything they have on NATO, because NATO is an active participant in this conflict. And again, if you take a look at Russian nuclear doctrine, one of the the conditions for the use of nuclear weapons is if NATO or a NATO-like entity assembles sufficient conventional military power that threatens the existential survival of Russia. So what NATO is seeking to do, they're not going to accomplish it, but what they're seeking to do is give Ukraine the ability to act as a NATO proxy to threaten the existential survival of Russia, which means Russia, if this actually occurred, would use nuclear weapons, not on Ukraine. They've said it straight up. This isn't going to be a tactical nuclear weapon against Ukraine. They're going to hit NATO. They're going to hit London. They're going to hit Berlin. They're going to hit Paris. They're going to hit Brussels. They're going to hit Madrid. They're going to hit Lisbon. Hey, Portugal, good job. You just made yourself a nuclear target. This is the reality. Now, again, the good news is Russia's winning this war, and they're going to win this war. Russia's ready for this. They're prepared for this. But politically, this is an escalation. And imagine, put yourself in Russia's shoes. What NATO's saying is they want to kill Russians. They want to kill Russians. This isn't some mathematical game with tanks and steel and all this kind of stuff. It's not a computer game. This is reality. Now, I've said that what all they're doing is actually enabling Russia to slaughter more Ukrainians. That's the truth. But let's say that, because the blade of war cuts both ways. That's just the harsh reality of it. That the same blade you'd use to kill somebody is cutting you. And let's say Russia gets away with a 10-to-1 casualty ratio. That's a fantastic ratio, almost impossible to achieve, but they're doing that now. But let's say the new tanks come in and Russia sustains this, and they kill 40,000 Ukrainian troops, which is what's going to happen. Russia's going to lose 4,000 dead. That's 4,000 mothers, 4,000 wives, 4,000 daughters, 4,000 sisters, 4,000 grandmothers and uncles and brothers and sons that are going to lose loved ones. This is unforgivable, literally unforgivable. And remember, this isn't a war that was provoked. It's not an unprovoked act of aggression by Russia. This is something that has been planned by NATO since 2008 when they invited Ukraine to join. Something that has been perpetrated by NATO since 2014 when Angela Merkel and Hollande, the French president, conspired with Petro Poroshenko, the Ukrainian president, to use the Minsk Accords as a shield to buy time to build up this NATO proxy army for the purpose of killing Russians. This has been going on since the spring of 2022. We now have the Ukrainian head of intelligence saying the peace agreement that Russia was sitting down in Istanbul to sign with Ukraine that Boris Johnson killed, it was a sham too. It was never going to happen. It was designed to buy time to do what? To kill Russians. To kill Russians. That's all this is about. And Lloyd Austin has admitted that when he came out in May of last year and he spoke in Warsaw and he said, we need to bring pain to Russia. Well, pain is a cute little word. It means death. It means dead Russians. It means suffering. And, for NATO, the United States, Germany, Portugal, and all others to act on this desire can only generate hate on the part of the Russians. And Europe better pray that the Russians turn out to be a forgiving nation, because what Europe is doing right now is unforgivable.
Computer's frozen.
Well said.
I have not heard him talk about the bombing in Iran, but I did hear this bull out of him about Trump, which is a bunch of crap. Where is it? I think right here.
So President Trump plans to stop the chemical, physical mutilation of America's children through gender surgeries.
Yeah, but he won't do anything about the medical industry in itself or the food, right? He won't do nothing about, fixing that. But this part he's going to come out and fix. Bullshit. Or the vaccinations that he put into play in the first place was Trump. They all work together.
If he's reelected, he says. We'll get to his message in a moment because it's a doozy. And boy, did the internet explode as a result and people applauding it up and down that he would stop this mutilation of our children in the United States if he's reelected. And some people say, well, maybe he's late to the party on this. Like maybe he could have been more outspoken on this earlier, perhaps. Perhaps. We would have all loved to have stopped this and nipped this in the bud before it got out of hand like it is right now. The United States is a country, though, completely run by special interests in the biopharmaceutical complex. Big Pharma drives all policy decisions in Washington, D.C. I don't know if you've noticed lately. Your life is driven by Big Pharma in the United States. Big Pharma makes a boatload of money off of gender reassignment surgeries. Is it any wonder that the Biden administration is happy to go along with all these horrific surgeries? Imagine your 12-year-old decides that they want to, have a mastectomy. And now state laws are saying that parents aren't allowed to get in the way of that. And Big Pharma, of course, doesn't want parents to get in the way of that because they make a lot of money off of these surgeries. Because it's not just the surgery, it's all of the drugs that you'll need to take for the rest of your life. Like you're locked in now, man. You're locked in to Big Pharma and you're on that money train for the rest of your life. Just as an example of how profitable these surgeries are for the biopharmaceutical complex, here's Dr. Shane Taylor from Vanderbilt University talking about their trans clinic and how profitable the surgeries are because they require a lot of follow-up appointments. Watch this.
Starting in January 1st of 2017, according to the Affordable Care Act, insurance carriers are mandated to cover medical expenses for trans folks. Some of our UMC financial folks in October of 2016, started a couple years ago, put down some costs of how much money we think each patient would bring in. And this is only including top surgery. This isn't including any bottom surgery. And it's a lot of money. These surgeries make a lot of money. So female to male chest reconstruction can bring in $40,000. A patient just on routine hormone treatment, who I'm only seeing a few times a year, can bring in several $1,000s. That requires a lot of visits and labs. It actually makes money for the hospital. Now these I got from the internet, but it's from the Philadelphia Center for Transgender Surgery, which does a lot of surgery for patients. I just want to give you an idea of how much these bottom surgeries are making. And I think this has to be an underestimate. This is for a vaginoplasty. They're quoting roughly around $20,000 for a vaginoplasty, but that doesn't include your hospital stay. That doesn't include your post-op visits. That doesn't include your anesthesia, your OR. So I would think that this has to be a gross underestimate. I think that's just like the surgeon's piece of it, which anybody who's ever been in a hospital knows that that's like 10% of it. And then the female to male bottom surgeries, these are huge money makers. Again, I think this has to be an underestimate that they're quoting around $20,000 for a phalloplasty. There's been different things that I've read that said it could be up to $100,000. Dr. Lineker, who's our surgeon, says that there's entire clinics where the entire clinic is supported just by their phalloplasties, and that is like a fraction of the surgeries that they're doing. These surgeries are labor intensive, they require a lot of follow-ups, they require a lot of OR time, and they make money. They make money for the hospital.
Isn't it so evil? All right, it's like evil incarnate is what you're watching right there.
Who in the hell is she talking to? Like, who's going to that speech?
Well, it's a group of people in the hospital system. Like, it's like their annual meeting, a meeting on how much money the hospital can make. Like, we got to really ramp up our phalloplasties and vaginoplasties because it just brings us a lot of money. It's not just that; it's all the follow-up meetings and all of the follow-up medication and meetings and OR visits and all of that.
They go out and they prey upon these kids and they tell them, oh, you got to get this. You have gender dysphoria, and they're doing that because they're marketing to these kids. They're going after that demographic so that they can make money.
Right,
What's
and
the
they're
difference between
normalizing
her and them?
It's a good question, and it's a normalizing
So does the food,
of what
though.
has
The food does it,
heretofore
too.
been known as a mental illness. Right, it's gender dysphoria. It's classified as a mental illness. In fact, I was researching today, and different psychologists are saying, yeah, in the psych wards, this is a mental illness. So now, if you say that, oh boy, you're in trouble. But it's now, of course, wokeism has gotten in the way, and now it's not. Now you don't have that. You can't classify it that way anymore, right? So wokeism is not. No. That's not mental illness. We need to really we need to make sure that we're allowing them to get these surgeries. 12 years old and the parents not involved, we keep the parents out of it. Like, we'll take care of it. In fact, the hospitals know how lucrative these surgeries are. They're so lucrative that they want to squash any community dissent about it. It's a smart strategy, actually. Send out people into the community. Listen to this. This is crazy. To push trans propaganda. And basically offer to go to the hospitals, like give them rides to the hospital. Like, we've got our army of people who, like, hey, you want to go get your a mastectomy? You want to go get, genital reconstruction or deconstruction or whatever the hell they want to call it? We'll drive you. It's almost like get out the vote. Like, oh, grandma can't get to the polling place? We'll pick you up. That's what they're doing.
Well, and some states are pushing to make it so they can do it out of parental consent.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, in California and others, like, we don't need the parents. Like, keep the parents out of it. We'll pick you up and take you. Your parents won't take you to go get that, vagina removed. We'll pick you up and take you. So
that pesky penis?
Call us. So Vanderbilt has a group of people that will do this, and they send them out. They call them trans buddies, and it's a program where they will help you. They'll take you to the hospital for these surgeries. They'll pick you up, and out in the community, pushing trans community, propaganda, basically. Like, so they're like, I don't know what the best way to describe it is. They're like ambassadors, and so they're out in the community, and they call them trans buddies. We'll even take you to your doctor's appointment, make it easier for you. Listen to this.
My name is Sean Riley, and I'm the program coordinator for Trans Buddy at the Program for LGBTQ Health at Vanderbilt University. Trans Buddy provides trained peer advocates for transgender patients who are coming for doctor's appointments or other healthcare-related services. Whether you're looking for something that's related to medical transition, such as hormone therapy, or something completely unrelated, like breaking an arm or going to an ENT, we are here to help support any transgender patients that come through our doors. The Trans Buddy program was organically created through the efforts of transgender people and continues to consistently be led by trans people in Middle Tennessee. The Trans Buddy program is a one-of-a-kind in the nation, and institutions are looking to Vanderbilt to replicate and expand programs like ours.
We're not seeking to find solutions often for people's problems. We're just seeking to be there and to accompany and to be a friendly face, and to be a non-medical face in a place where everybody coming in the room is going to be a healthcare provider, and it may be unsafe.
Sometimes I'm there to be always observing kind of how hospital staff are interacting with the individuals, and again, using correct pronouns or treating the individual with respect.
So we want to make sure that you're not being misgendered. Like, we'll be there with the right pronouns, and we'll drive you for your surgeries. We'll be there. We'll be there to take you.
Wait. Are they talking like you can use the wrong pronouns pre-surgery, but then they make sure you don't pro-surgery? Like,
yeah, I mean, after they'll make sure that everything is woke compliant, making sure that you won't be misgendered. Like, we'll really take care of it. So you're talking
because they can still call it a penis until it's gone, right? Like,
I guess, and once it's gone, then you can't call it
pre-vagina. We're gonna operate on your pre-vagina.
Well, no, I did find it interesting that the second clip in there where she said, like, well, we're there to have a non-medical face, so that because most of the people in the hospital are going to be medical, and we want you to feel safe. I'm like, wait a minute, isn't that like by default the safest place on earth is in the hospital? I mean, like, right. Like I guess unless it's in a war zone, like. How does that work?
You're worried that it won't be safe for you. It won't be safe for you. Like, your choice is to go there and to have some sort of a gender reassignment surgery, and we just want to be a friendly face to encourage you. Just go along with it. Like, yeah, you may be having second thoughts about having a mastectomy. We'll be there to, just let you know that it's okay. Look, I did it, so you can too. And yeah, now I'm on drugs for the rest of my life, and I totally regret it, and I'm totally depressed. But I won't tell you. Trump has an announcement, and he came out with a series of announcements. But he made a bunch of them, but this is perhaps the biggest one. He also said if he was president, he would force peace in Ukraine. within 24 hours, he would have a peace plan in place so that they would stop killing and people would stop dying in Ukraine, which, imagine that. No one in his party wants that, of course, but he did say that. But he did say this about transgender, and his plan is to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our children. Watch.
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very.
I don't even want to hear him.
Germans should heed the warning of one of their most famous socialists, Karl Marx. I never thought I would quote Karl Marx here on the show, but maybe Germans should actually pay attention to one of their own. When Karl Marx, who famously said, "History repeats itself, first as a tragedy, and second as a farce." Let that sink in for a minute, because I've heard this phrase many, many years. And it kind of creeps up, and it's one of those things where you kind of scratch your head a little bit. You think about this. History repeats itself, first as tragedy, second as farce.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time in war when we met, Russians, Germans, Russians destroyed Germany. We divide up Berlin into east and west. We crushed your army. Tens of millions of people died as a result of what Germany did.
Who's we in this instance?
I'm just saying the collective West, but of course the collective we being Russia in this scenario. I'm not saying we are
Russia
Russians.
is part of the
I'm
West.
just using it as a rhetorical sort of a narrative device.
Okay. I'm trying to follow you.
Yeah. So Russia loses. Russia is tens of millions of people, of course, died.
45 million.
45 million.
Yeah.
So 45, just a paltry, 45 million people die from what Germany decided to do. Now, the second time you repeat the same mistake, and what will happen to your country now? Will it become a farce? So what will happen when Russia decides to retaliate against a growing German threat? We're about to find out, because Germany just today openly declared war on Russia. This isn't a backroom conversation, some low-level peon, some low-level person. No. This is the German foreign minister. Oddly, speaking in English, this is Annalena Baerbock, oddly speaking in English for all the world to hear, even though she was at the Euro Council meeting.
And
which,
follow that line.
There's no English-speaking country represented at the Euro. So she's speaking in English so we can all hear
Bald
how
head,
she feels about
sideburns,
this war,
ear,
openly declaring
mouth,
that Germany
nose,
is now at war with Russia.
eye.
Listen.
And therefore, I've said already in the last days, yes, we have to do more to defend Ukraine. Yes, we have to do more also on tanks. But the most important and the crucial part is that we do it together and that we do not do the blame game in Europe, because we are fighting a war against Russia and not against each other. Thank you.
Hair.
Thank you, Madam Minister.
She's not speaking, though, only for Germany. She's speaking for all European countries.
Yeah.
Saying all European countries are at war with Russia.
We are in a world war with Russia. We are at war with Russia. Not Ukraine is at war with Russia. We are at war with Russia. Those were her words. And this, of course, many Germans were quick to freak out about this, rightly so. Of course, we've seen a lot of protests across Germany saying down with this, absolutely not. And now they're calling for her immediate resignation. Will it happen? Of course not, because she's a stooge of the deep state. She's perfect for them. Russia responded, saying, hey, the ball's in your court now. Want to keep escalating things because this is going to go nuclear. This, of course, is the same nut job who told Germans that she will put Ukraine first no matter what German voters think or how hard their lives get. Watch.
But if
Comes
I
his
give
other
the
eye.
promise to people in Ukraine, we stand with you as long as you need us, then I want to deliver. No matter what my German voters think, but I want to deliver to the people of Ukraine. And this is why, for me, it's important to be always very frank and clear. And this means every measure I'm taking, I have to be clear that this holds on as long as Ukraine needs me. We are facing now winter time where we will be challenged as democratic politicians. People will go on the street and say, we cannot pay our energy prices. And I will say, yes, I know, so we help you with social measures. But I don't want to say, okay, then we stop the sanctions against Russia. We will stand with Ukraine, and this means the sanction will stay also in wintertime, even if it gets really tough for politicians.
Yeah, so we don't care. We don't care about you, citizens. It doesn't really matter. What we care about, of course, is Ukraine.
And she's making a unilateral statement. She's saying, I gave my word. This is what I want. Other people may not want it, but I like the idea of this, and I'm sticking with it. It's very self-centered.
Yeah. So screw you. It doesn't matter what, you can't pay your energy bills. We're sticking with Ukraine. My voters. I don't care. So Russia fired back. Of course, Putin's ally, Russian President Medvedev, invites Biden and Schultz to stop the doomsday clock ticking. Germans are outraged by this overall, of course. And here's a German response to this. So here's a German who says she has to immediately step down. It's one thing to support an allied country, which I guess is already a stretch of the term, but how could one be that irresponsible when choosing one's words? The most important thing to do is avoid a direct conflict, not to embrace it. German politician Marianne Harder-Kunel says this. Posted this, and the translation is, what Airbach expresses here is a de facto war to Russia. In this war, she wants to pull all Europe in. She carelessly risks human lives. Whom does this woman serve? Not German or European interests, but U.S. geopolitics.
Bingo.
And of course, yes, bingo. That's the heart of it. That's the heart of it. What she's talking about, of course, is the new Leopard tanks being sent to Ukraine. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that Germans would not send Leopard tanks to Ukraine because the people don't want us to do it. He said, but apparently the German people don't matter much to these politicians because Olaf Scholz has done an about-face and is now sending Leopard tanks. As he makes this announcement, he asks the German people to trust him. This is like an unbelievable statement he makes. He asks the German people to trust him and his federal government after, wait a minute, you told us you didn't want us to elevate a war in Ukraine and send Leopard tanks. We ignored you. Now I want you to trust me. Listen.
Es gibt in diesem Land viele Bürgerinnen und Bürger, die sich Sorgen machen. Auch angesichts einer solchen Entscheidung und angesichts der Dimension, die diese Waffe mit sich bringt. Und deshalb möchte ich diesen Bürgerinnen und Bürgern hier und an dieser Stelle sagen, vertrauen Sie mir, vertrauen Sie der Bundesregierung. Wir werden weiter, weil wir international abgestimmt handeln, sicherstellen, dass diese Unterstützung möglich ist, ohne dass die Risiken für unser Land darüber in eine falsche Richtung wachsen. Das ist, warum wir das so tun, und so werden wir es auch weitermachen.
So think about how dumb that is, okay? You told us that you did not want us to send tanks into Ukraine because you don't want this to descend into World War III, and then of course Germany gets attacked and we're destroyed, right? You, the German citizen, said you didn't want this overwhelmingly.
Yes.
We ignored you. We're doing it anyway. Now I'm asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to put your faith in the federal government that this won't descend even further, because he says we put controls into place to make sure that our country doesn't go in the wrong direction. Have you been to Germany lately?
Yeah, when it goes to
Have you seen
both
what
sides.
direction Germany is going? Where people can't pay their heating bills? You've turned off nuclear power in favor of coal power plants?
Protests in even small towns.
All that.
Anti-war protests saying, we do not want this. We absolutely don't support it.
Your Nord Stream pipeline is blown up by your allies, and you know this, and you have the answers to this, but you won't release it? You won't release the information on this, and now you're paying exorbitant costs for natural gas? Wait a minute, you let the United States and its allies blow up the Nord Stream pipeline, where you could get cheap natural gas from Russia. Now you're paying 4 times as much, or even in some cases 7 times as much, for the same product shipped from the United States now.
And reverting to coal.
Yeah. But don't worry, our country's going in the right direction. Like, this is madness.
Right, and this just trust me a little bit more when there's no real answer there. When we could tell that he, at least gave pause earlier in this week, saying maybe we don't do this. maybe we hold back a little. The people don't seem to want it. And then, oh, no, full steam ahead. So whatever pressures were put in place that made him capitulate,
Yeah.
we're not quite sure, but we don't get an answer on it at all.
He literally, I mean, it's amazing. He literally says there are many citizens in our country who are concerned about this decision to send tanks to Ukraine and about the size of these weapons. And he goes on to say, so I would like to tell these citizens here and now you should trust the federal government more.
That's what Jacinda Ardern said within the last few years, and now she's, on the runway.
Yeah, she's on the run. Or who knows what the hell's it? She's like shopping for new underwear. Russian leaders and media personalities went after Schultz today. Here's just one example from Vladimir Solovyov. He hosts a very popular show in Russia. Watch this. Read the subtitles of this.
По-моему, пора послать четкий решительный сигнал, что мы считаем Германию стороной конфликта, и появление немецких танков однозначно приведет к тому, что мы будем считать территорию Германии, военные базы и прочие объекты законными целями. НАТО хочет повоевать так хитрым образом, делая вид, что не воюет, не дождетесь. Не дождетесь. И Писториус войдет в историю, как один из кретинов, которые привели к тому, что территория Германии оказалась в зоне прямого поражения. И Шольц, и Бербок. И немецкий народ будет знать, каких очередных нацистских лидеров они воспитали и привели к власти. Это мое субъективное мнение. Мы агрессор. 8 лет вы, сволочи, подпитывали нацистский украинский режим. 8 лет вы убивали жителей Донбасса. 8 лет вы лгали устами вашей Меркель. Вы не видели трагедии Донбасса, убитых детей Донбасса? Европейские фарисеи, подонки нацистские.
Okay, I just want to say their political shows are a little more harrowing than ours.
It's a little bit different than Hannity.
Yeah.
Right.
That's very intimidating. They don't have...
I mean...
I wouldn't want to be a guest on that show if you get it wrong. They're like, gulag.
Right.
Get out of here.
It's not like a game show. It's not like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Right.
But it's a political talk show.
It's just a little intimidating.
So for those of you who are listening and driving and you're like, I don't know what he was saying. Well, he was basically saying when you put German tanks inside Ukraine, that literally means that, you know what, now Germany is fair game. Like fair game for us to attack targets inside of Germany. Oh, and by the way, you're claiming that we are the aggressors, he says. You've been lying about what has been unfolding from the Ukrainian aggressors in Donbass for the last 8 years, where a genocide has been carried out. And
another unfortunate part of that is that it kind of goes to the narrative now that they're like, well, if once Russia goes into Ukraine, then they're going to go into this country, then they're going to go into this country. But, like, if they do, it's because they're being forced to.
Well, I know. I mean, that's the thing, right? So, if Germany comes in and does a full-scale... I mean, they're launching these Leopard tanks. I mean, they greenlit 100 of them coming through Poland, and Germany on their own is sending the newer versions of them now. Like, that's what that speech is about. So they're sending them. So is the United States with Abrams tanks.
I mean, let's be clear. Neither side has to do either thing. Germany does not have to send these weapons, and Russia does not have to consider this an escalation and then retaliate. Nobody has to do any of these things. This is, I mean, we're operating on a very, like, life as a board game type way at this point, rather than, like, how about we value human life? We're just on a different playing field at this point.
Well, yeah. I mean, and they're operating in a totally different reality. You know, they're denying, of course, or willfully ignorant. And Angela Merkel even talked about this. She knew what was happening in the Donbass. She knew all along that this was an instigation. And that, of course, was leaked recently. So we know that she knew what was happening in this genocide.
How many times does the U.S. have to prove? How many times does the U.S. have to show that they don't value human life at all?
No,
or we wouldn't be doing what we do.
I think the world is waking up to that. I think maybe the world is waking up to that in a lot of ways. People who just sort of blindly went along with this crap for so long, people who maybe even blindly supported this war from the very beginning, are starting to understand now the truth behind it. Max Blumenthal tweeted this. Since the U.S. destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline supplying cheap gas to Germany, the German Kuckmeister, Olaf Scholz, has retaliated by caving to U.S. demands to send Leopard tanks to Ukraine and asking German citizens to take fewer hot showers. So Scholz even teased further deliveries of air defense systems today, heavy artillery, multiple rocket launchers, he said today. and says Germany intends to expand what we have delivered, a major U-turn on his previous statements. As Michael Tracy pointed out, during internal debates, Olaf Scholz pointed out that there is no majority support in Germany for sending battle tanks to Ukraine, he said, thereby overturning 75 years of precedent. But then he did it anyway. After impatience was reportedly growing in Washington, D.C., oh no, we can't have impatience growing from Washington. So he caved to Washington once again. Here's Der Spiegel reporting in yellow, noting that there is no majority support in German polls for tank deliveries to Ukraine. Now, this is one of the most remarkable pieces of video. I want you to watch this. So, Sky News is doing an interview with Zelensky. And Sky News decides that at this moment, we're going to tell you with a huge smile on our faces that America will be deploying a full battle battalion of Abrams battle tanks to Ukraine. On top of which, these Leopard tanks, Olaf Scholz is sending these Leopard tanks to you. And watch this moment. She gets to break the news. Like, she's so excited from Sky. She's like smiling. Here you go, Vladimir. You're getting your Christmas tanks. Watch.
Leopard 2 tanks are coming from Europe. You must be relieved.
Ще ні. Щойно. Шольц? Тільки що? Ну, у мене з Шольцем буде розмова. Ось зараз прес-секретар сказав, що щойно Шольц, канцлер Шольц, підтвердив, що дасть леопарди. У мене зустріч одразу з ним розмова по телефону одразу після нашого інтерв'ю. Я дуже радий і хочу подякувати Німеччині. Я дякую Британії і дякую Сполученим Штатам Америки за те, що вони прийняли такі рішення. Але я вдячний в цілому світу за підтримку України. А якщо ми говоримо відкрито з вами і чесно, то кількість танків і термін, коли вони можуть до нас доїхати, мають невід'ємну, а важливу роль.
So thank you.
Another
Get
one
these things
here.
here quickly. We need them. We want them.
them
Just
out.
keep sending them to us. Time is critical. Thank you so much. I didn't even know that. I've got a phone call with Olaf a little bit in a few minutes here. So I didn't know that. Thank you so much for that. That's amazing. So we got the Abrams coming.
Very big
we got
one.
the Leopards coming. We got the Challenger tanks coming.
That was like a gender reveal.
Right.
Yeah, she was like, she missed her opportunity. She missed her opportunity to be like, just reach under your seat. It's a tank.
You got a tank. You got a tank.
Just pop this balloon here and we'll see how many bullets come out of it. And that's what you get.
And Vladimir, the answer is you are the father. Where's Maury Povich when you need him? The U.S. also today announcing that America will be deploying a full battalion of Abrams battle tanks to Ukraine. Remember when, I mean, I just can't so we're sending all of these tanks, a full battle battalion of tanks, of Abrams tanks. And by the way, who is going to man these tanks? It's not Ukraine. They don't have the experience for it at all. Who's going to man these things? Of course, it will be Americans, it will be Polish forces, it will be British special forces, it will be NATO forces who've already been there. And of course, the body bags are starting to stack up. So remember when President Biden said this?
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews. Just understand, don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say. That's called World War III. Okay? Let's get it straight here, guys. That old expression, don't kid a kidder.
We're at war with Russia, and here's the tanks to prove it. So these tanks will show up. We just got reports a few minutes ago that the 100 or so older Leopard tanks are coming in through Poland. Those should be arriving like within the next day or two. And Russia has already said, hey, when these things arrive, they will be destroyed the moment they arrive. So,
okay. What a way to ultimately thank them for what they did in World War II, you know? The Russians liberating and helping them. Like, thanks for the help, but you know what? Now we don't like you.
Right, and these are the same leaders that are telling us that we can't drive gas-driven cars. But marching this weaponry, gas-powered weaponry, straight into battle to be released into the atmosphere. So wait till you hear this upcoming report about electric vehicles. It's going to make you even madder when you realize They want you to walk. Like, literally, researchers are saying, yeah, EVs are not going to actually get us where we need to go, but you can start walking more often. We're going to build cities for you to walk. In the meantime, though, gas-driven armory, totally fine.
Well, and by the way, the Abrams tanks are notoriously fuel. What is the word I'm trying
Gas
to figure out?
guzzlers?
Gas guzzlers, but they're fuel incompetent, fuel
Inefficient?
inefficient. Yeah, they're awful. Absolutely awful. So let's send the Abrams in. You know, you can lecture all of us at the World Economic Forum last week when you literally had a panel where you discussed getting rid of our cars. Like we will take away your cars. Great. So, but we'll send you Abrams tanks to kill some people. So that's our double priorities here. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.
All right, well, the panel called Ready for Brain Transparency at the Davos World Economic Forum made us pretty nervous. We talked about this last week in case you missed it. With good reason, it is the stuff of... so let's just quickly go over the vocabulary because I want you to say that you heard it here first.
Okay.
When people start to use these words in a way that's empowering and you can say, oh, I'm calling BS on that. That sounds like a control mechanism. So again, it's not a new world order. It's...
a new government order. No. What is it?
We went over this.
I know. I'm sorry.
Reglobalization.
Thank you, Philip. Okay. All right. It's not, mind control. It's...
Brain transparency.
Yes. Thank you. It's not controlling your movement. It's in your car. It's a...
Battery passport.
Battery passport. Okay. And it's not warmongering in Ukraine. It's a...